Guys, welcome to another episode of Smash JT. In this episode, I'm going to count down my top 10 favorite Sega Genesis games of all time. Smash JT. Coming in at number 10 is Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, and from the opening scene to this game all the way through to the end, the entire game is a blast to play. And I'll be honest, the premise is a little bit strange, seeing as you're Michael Jackson saving little girls trapped in closets that yell Michael every time you find them. The game itself is a ton of fun to play through, and doing dances to kill the enemies is just something so unique. Not to mention the music in this game is some of the best music you're gonna find on the Sega Genesis platform. Coming in at number 9 is Ghostbusters, not the one that was published by Activision, the one that actually was published by Sega themselves. This Ghostbusters game goes down in history for me personally as my favorite Ghostbusters game I have ever had the pleasure of playing. Initially, you're allowed to pick which level you want to start on, and you can choose which Ghostbuster you want to play as. Well, except for Winston Zeddemore, who is noticeably absent from this game. I don't know if that's because of a licensing issue, or they couldn't sign him in for the game, or whatever the reason was, he's missing from the game. And even back in the day when I played it, I was always wondering why there are only 3 Ghostbusters that were playable. Outside of that minor squabble, this game is an absolute blast, and if you haven't played it, you owe it to yourself to try Ghostbusters on the Genesis. Coming in at number 8 is Rocket Knight Adventures, and for some reason, animal characters as the main protagonists in games back in the day seem to be in vogue. In vogue? Free your mind! It was designed by the same guy that made Contra the Alien Wars, Shattered Soldier, and Hardcore. This game is an absolute blast to play through. While at its core, it's a basic side-scrolling platformer with linear runs through the levels, the player is able to jump and attack with the sword, either directly or by shooting energy forward when swung, or charge up the rocket pack and go flying in one of 8 directions. And the variety seems unending with this, with some of the levels switching up to a Gradius-style side-scrolling shoot-'em-up. Coming in at number 7 is Shining Force, and when I first played this game, I was initially disappointed because I didn't really understand the concept of how the battle system worked. But the more I stuck with it, the more I fell in love with it. Coming from someone who's used to role-playing games where you'd attack the enemy and they'd attack you back and you'd attack them back until you killed them, Shining Force switched us up from the traditional RPG style into more of a strategy-based RPG, where you would move your characters in a grid system to set them up against the enemies and take one attack typically at a time until all your characters' moves were gone, and then you'd wait for the enemy's turn. And not only was the gameplay fun after I got used to it, but the storyline itself is absolutely epic. Shining Force is an incredible Sega Genesis game. Coming in at number 6 is Golden Axe. Me and my buddies would play this game growing up and have a blast going through the entire game. One of those games that really had everything. It had incredible music, great graphics, and really stellar gameplay. It was so fun to be able to play through this game as a multiplayer game with all the variety of moves and different levels. Golden Axe is just an all-time classic. Coming in at number 5 is The Revenge of Shinobi, and this one I actually had to play through all the Shinobis before making this list to make sure that Revenge of Shinobi was my favorite one. And after going through all of them, Shadow Dancer, Shinobi 3, I can truly rest assured that The Revenge of Shinobi is the best Shinobi game on the Sega Genesis. With a variety of enemies and level design, everything about this game is absolutely epic, except the last level where it's just a maze and a pain in the ass to get through. But outside of that minor squabble, Revenge of Shinobi goes down as one of my all-time favorite Genesis games. And at number 4 we have Strider, one of the best arcade home console ports that I've ever played in my entire life. From the graphics, to the sound, to the stage design, to all the little secrets and things you do as you go through this game, Strider stands the test of time as one of the most epic side-scrolling platformers that I've ever played in my life. The game balances its challenges perfectly with unique enemy designs and really fun levels to play through. If you're a fan at all of the Sega Genesis while you were growing up, you definitely played Strider. But if you're new to the platform and looking for something to pick up and play, Strider is an excellent choice. Coming in at number 3 is one of my all-time favorite Castlevania games, Castlevania Bloodlines, where you can control one of two characters, John or Eric. John can swing a whip, and Eric has a spear. When I played through this game, I always chose Eric because I felt like it was so cool to switch up the tried and true Castlevania formula of using a whip, where you could use Eric swinging a spear and have the ability to perform super high jumps with it. Not only is this game a ton of fun to play through, but Bloodlines is also noteworthy for its abundance of special effects, like Atlantis Shrine's water reflections, the swaying Tower of Pisa, and large multi-jointed bosses. The final stage even uses effects to add challenge, such as playing upside down or playing while the screen divides up into sections. They took a lot of risks making this game, and for the most part, they all panned out. Coming in at number 2, I gotta pick a Sonic game, and for me, my favorite Sonic game on the Genesis is Sonic 2. Adding Tails to the mix really made this game stand out. At the start of the game, you can select either Sonic, Tails, or both, and the difference between the two is purely cosmetic. But while you're playing it as a kid, you don't really notice that. You truly feel like you're playing as Tails. Not to mention, adding the ability to have a 2-player mode in this game blew my mind. This might seem silly to hear nowadays, but back in the day, it was truly unique to have a multiplayer side-scrolling platformer game even exist. Now, we've reached number 1, but before I get to my pick, I want to invite a very special guest onto the show. Someone who is well known for being a Sega fanatic. The Immortal John Hancock.
The Immortal John Hancock here, and I want to talk about my favorite Sega Genesis game of all time. Hands down, it is Streets of Rage 2. And Streets of Rage 2 to me is like the perfect Sega Genesis game. One thing I like about it, this wasn't an arcade game. This was made for the Sega Genesis, but it has that like final fight feel to it. It really captures great Sega Genesis sound, which I don't think the Sega Genesis is really known for its excellent sound, but I really like Streets of Rage 2. The length, the difficulty, the different character options, and I love brawlers in general. I think it's one of the best brawlers made of all time, and it's a fantastic addition to the Sega Genesis library.
Streets of Rage 2 is an absolutely epic pick, and I'm not going to argue with that one. As far as my favorite Sega Genesis game of all time, it has to be Phantasy Star 2. Playing this as a kid, it introduced me to so many mainstays and classic JRPGs that are still used today. And while the game doesn't necessarily hold up compared to today's RPGs, what with the insane amount of grinding involved with it, the music, the graphics, the sound effects, the storyline, the gameplay, literally everything about Phantasy Star 2 was epic. But good luck getting through this game without the strategy guide, because every dungeon is basically a maze, and there's so many random battles, and there's only limited inventory. It makes it a truly unique challenge to be able to get through without the ability to save unless you get a special item way later on in the game. You have to go through the entire dungeon without dying, and if you die, you lose all your experience, you lose all your gold, you lose anything you picked up in the dungeon, starts you over from scratch from where you last saved it. So yes, I do recommend playing Phantasy Star 2, but the use of save states is highly recommended. Anyways, those are my top 10 Sega Genesis games ever created. I want to say special thank you to John Hancock for joining me and giving his favorite pick. And before we go, I want you guys to let me know down below what your favorite Sega Genesis games are. And as always, I will catch you on the next one. Have a good one. Smash and change.